At my sister's fancy birthday party, I wasn't even invited. They said I was jealous, a loser. My dad told me to stay away, to not ruin her special day. What he didn't know was I had paid for everything. The venue, the cake, the dress, the DJ, all of it. So I did what no one expected. I stopped every payment, canceled every booking, and left town. And when the guests arrived and found an empty hall, no music, no cake, and a crying birthday girl, everyone finally asked the same question: where's Rachel? That was the day I stopped being their shadow and started becoming unforgettable. Hi, my name is Rachel, and I've always been treated like the less important daughter in my family. My younger sister, Ava, is everyone's favorite. She's the kind of girl who gets praised for doing the bare minimum. If she posts a selfie, mom shares it with the whole family group. If she gets a new hairstyle, dad calls her a star. Meanwhile, I graduated early, landed a stable job, and even helped with bills, but none of that mattered to them. They saw me as too serious or jealous, always jealous of Ava. The truth is, I never wanted to compete with her. I just wanted to be seen, maybe appreciated for once. But my dad made it clear. Ava was the star, and I was just the shadow. So, when Ava's 25th birthday was coming up, I offered to help. My parents said they didn't have the money to make it special. So, quietly, I paid for the decorations. I booked the venue. I even covered the fancy cake and the live music, every single expense. I did it without telling anyone because I didn't want attention. I just wanted the family to be happy. But 2 days before the party, my dad called me. His voice was cold. "Rachel," he said, "I don't want you at the party."
What?
"Why?" I asked. "Let's not make this about you. You're always trying to take the spotlight. You're just jealous of your sister." Then he added the word that cut deep: loser. He didn't even ask how I felt. He just told me to stay away. I sat there, frozen, holding the receipt for the birthday cake I had ordered just hours ago. The same cake he'd soon pose next to, pretending he bought it. He had no idea, but he was about to find out. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling, completely numb. For years, I had tried to earn their respect, quietly helping from the background while Ava was showered with praise for simply existing. But this was the final straw. I picked up my laptop and logged into the event accounts. One by one, I started pulling the plug. First, the venue. I canceled the full payment. No refund because it was past the deadline, but I didn't care. Let them show up and see the doors locked. Then I called the bakery. The custom 3-tier cake with Ava's name written in gold? Canceled. Next, the band. I told them I was no longer sponsoring the performance. They were polite and understanding. The flower arrangements, the lighting crew, the event photographer, I canceled every single thing I had booked and paid for. No one questioned it because my name was on every contract. And I didn't stop there. I went to the online payment platform I had used to order her designer birthday dress, a gift from me which no one knew, and canceled that, too. I emailed the vendor to stop the shipment and return it to sender. Then I packed a small bag, booked a 2-day trip out of town, and turned off my phone. No fights, no messages, no goodbyes. They didn't want me there?
Fine.
Let them see what a party without me looks like. The morning of Ava's big birthday party arrived. The sun was shining, the guest list was full, and my family had no clue what was about to happen. I was already miles away, sipping coffee in a quiet hotel lobby, scrolling through my feed like nothing had happened. That's when the messages started. At first, they were from my cousin Tara. "Hey, do you know why the venue is closed?" Then another. The cake never arrived. Ava's freaking out. I smirked. Next came the panicked call from my dad. I didn't answer. Then my mom. Then Ava herself. I watched as the missed calls piled up, one after another. I turned my phone face down and let them ring. Meanwhile, at the party venue, guests were arriving to chaos. The security guard told them the event was canceled. There were no flowers, no music, no cake, no staff, just a confused crowd standing outside a locked hall in formal clothes, whispering and wondering what had gone wrong. Ava was pacing in heels, crying and yelling at vendors over the phone. not realizing none of them were paid. Eventually, one of the staff members broke the news. The woman who made all the bookings, Rachel, canceled everything yesterday. Silence. I later found out that Ava screamed at my dad, asking how he could let this happen. That's when it hit him. He had insulted and kicked out the very person who made the entire party possible. People started whispering things like, "Wasn't Rachel the one paying for this?" And, "How could they treat her like that?" Guests began to leave, murmuring and shaking their heads. Some even posted about the disaster party on social media. One video showed Ava crying in her birthday dress outside a dark, empty venue with a caption, "When you bite the hand that feeds you." It went viral. By the time I got back home 2 days later, the damage was already done. The video of Ava crying outside the venue had racked up over 1.6 million views. The internet was ruthless. Comment sections were filled with strangers saying things like, "Serves her right," and "This is why you treat people with respect." Some even called her the birthday brat. But what really made the situation explode were the screenshots. My cousin Tara, bless her honesty, shared our family group chat, showing how my dad called me a jealous loser and banned me from the party. She added her own caption, "Crazy how Rachel paid for everything and still got kicked out." That post went viral, too. Now, people weren't just laughing, they were angry. Angry for me. I had strangers messaging me, saying, "You're a legend. You did the right thing," and even, "Thank you for showing us that kindness has limits." And then came the calls again, this time from my mom.
She begged.
She cried. She told me they didn't know, that if they had known I paid for everything, they would have treated me differently. But that was the point. They didn't even think to ask. They just assumed the worst always had. Then Ava called, sobbing, "Rachel, please." I didn't know. I'm so embarrassed.
Can we talk?
I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I said, "You didn't know because none of you cared to ask. You don't get to cry now." And I hung up. A few days later, I got an official letter from the event company. They wanted to use my story with permission for a podcast about client mistreatment and customer service breakdowns. I said yes. That interview would change everything. I didn't expect much from the podcast interview. I just wanted to tell my side of the story clearly and honestly. I talked about growing up in a family where I was always less than. I explained how I had quietly supported my parents financially after Dad lost his job, never asking for credit, how I had paid for my sister's expensive birthday party just to make her happy, and how they repaid me by calling me jealous and throwing me out. I wasn't bitter when I spoke. I was calm, but the pain was there in my voice, and people heard it. The podcast episode went live on a Monday morning. By Tuesday, my inbox was flooded. Messages came from people who had lived similar experiences, older siblings who were ignored, daughters who were underappreciated, people who had been cast aside despite everything they'd done. The episode hit a nerve. Then came a message from a woman named Sasha Lynn, the founder of a women's empowerment nonprofit. She offered me a speaking slot at an upcoming event. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. I stood in front of 300 people and shared my story live. I talked about boundaries, about knowing your worth, about walking away even when it hurts. After that, everything snowballed. I was invited to do panels, podcasts, even YouTube interviews. People wanted to hear more. They weren't just interested in the birthday disaster. They wanted to know what I did next. So, I started a YouTube channel, The Uninvited Daughter. I shared weekly videos, not just about what happened, but how I moved on, budget tips, setting boundaries, telling your truth without guilt. My channel grew fast. Sponsors reached out. I signed my first brand deal within 2 months. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just Ava's sister. I was Rachel in my own spotlight. It had been almost a year since that birthday party. I was living in my own apartment, running my growing YouTube channel, and finally building a life that I controlled. I hadn't spoken to my dad or Ava in months. And honestly, I didn't miss the silence. Then one day, something unexpected happened. I was reviewing applications for a new assistant. My channel had become too big for me to handle alone, and I needed help with scheduling, emails, and community management. I posted the job online, And after a week, my manager handed me a short list of candidates. One name stood out: Ava Miller. I stared at the screen for a full minute. The resume was decent: some volunteer work, a few internships, no stable job. I wasn't even surprised. After the birthday disaster, Ava's reputation had taken a hit. No one wanted to hire the girl who publicly humiliated her own sibling and threw a tantrum at her own party. Still, I was curious. I called her in for an interview without telling her who she'd be meeting. The next day, Ava walked into my office, dressed in a beige blazer and heels that clicked nervously across the floor. She didn't recognize the space or the logo behind my desk. When she saw me, she froze. "Rachel," she said, stunned. I smiled. "Good to see you again. Please sit." She sat down slowly, her hands shaking slightly. I could see the embarrassment all over her face, but she tried to push through. I didn't know this was your company. I really need this job." I looked her straight in the eye. "You said I was a jealous loser," I said softly. "Now you're asking me for a job?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I closed her file. "I'm looking for someone who knows what it means to respect others. Someone who sees people for who they are, not what they can do for them." Then I stood up. "You're not that person." And just like that, I walked her to the door. She didn't fight back. She didn't argue. She just nodded, eyes glassy, and left. That day, I felt something shift inside me. Not out of cruelty, but closure. I didn't need revenge. I had something better: peace, power, and the life they told me I was never good enough to have. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a national leadership summit. My talk was titled, "When Being the Black Sheep Becomes Your Superpower." As I stood backstage, mic clipped to my collar, I took a deep breath and thought about everything that had led to this moment. The rejection, the betrayal, the silence, the collapse of their perfect little party, and the rise of me. I looked out at the crowd, hundreds of people waiting to hear from the girl they once called a jealous loser. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the CEO of a growing media brand, a speaker, a creator, a woman who had learned the hard way that sometimes walking away is the greatest gift you can give yourself. And I wasn't angry anymore. I told my story honestly, every painful detail. And I ended with this: they didn't break me when they pushed me out. They set me free. And once I stopped begging for a seat at their table, I built my own. The crowd stood. Applause echoed around the room. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't invisible. I wasn't in anyone's shadow. I was exactly where I was meant to be.